welcome to the first episode of this off-season, the 2019-2020 season of the NFL Fantasy Football Edition. I got my active on. I'm feeling frisky. All right, let's do it. Cut the crap. So on this episode, we are going to be covering the NFC West with a fantasy preview. So we got the Cardinals, we got the Rams, the Seahawks, and the 49ers, all right? So I just want to update you on how I get my research. So I use a bunch of different websites and then my own brain to conduct my research. But what I use for my depth chart specifically is this website called rlads.com, where they have a lot of good spreadsheets about how everyone's set up on the team. Then I'll go to fantasypros.com and look at the depth charts at an ADP ranking, so average draft position ranking based on all of the offense. rlads has offense, defense, and the head coaches, so I can see all of that. And so, let's jump right into it. So, we're going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. They seem to be having the most hype around them after the Raiders this year because of the Hard Knocks, but it's all revolving around Kyler Murray and his old head coach, Cliff Kingsbury. They don't really have an OC right now, but their defensive coordinator is the ex-Broncos head coach, Vance Joseph. So the defense is going to be a little suspect this year, but he looks like he can bolster it after what he did in Denver. So I expect Kyler Murray to break out this year in his rookie season and be a dual threat quarterback like Lamar Jackson, but better. When we look at the running back position, David Johnson finished 9th in PPR leagues with the worst offense in football. So now that he's got a dual threat quarterback, I see David Johnson being a monster in redraft leagues. But looking at his age, I'm going to avoid him in the second round of dynasty leagues. Now, when we move to the wide receiver positions, the biggest standout right now is going to be Christian Kirk and the rookie slot receiver Andy Isabella. Christian Kirk looks like he's going to be taking over Larry Fitzgerald's role. Larry Fitzgerald's got 1-2 seasons max, so for dynasty purposes, Christian Kirk looks to be a boss, and in redraft, he looks like he's going to just have that next step up with the targets and looks to be Kyler Murray's guy. But Larry Fitzgerald's probably going to be that reliable tight end target, even though he's a wide receiver. Andy Isabella looks like he could then erupt onto the scene as the slot receiver because Christian Kirk will then move to the outside with Larry Fitzgerald. The tight end position is real sketchy with this team with Charles Clay and Ricky Seals-Jones. I don't like any of them for fantasy purposes. And then their offensive line, they made some adjustments, but it still looks pretty dang sketchy. They added Marcus Gilbert, and that was about it. Looking at their defense, we've got, Terrell Suggs was a new addition. So his veteran leadership will be positive for the linebacking core in the pass rush. Jordan Hicks is pretty sick from Philly. Brooks Reed, he's pretty good. And then they still kept Patrick Peterson. They have DJ Swearinger. Subpar defense. All right, let's move on. Now we've got the San Francisco 49ers, another team that looks very, very interesting. Kyle Shanahan got his guy Tevin Coleman. We'll get there in a second, but he didn't hire an offensive coordinator. He is staying the offensive coordinator, and I like it. And then the defense, I think it's also going to be a little suspect, but their pass rush is fantastic. So, okay, let's hop into it. Jimmy Garoppolo is back, and he has no restrictions right now. The Niners do have a nice core at quarterback in case something happens to Jimmy, but I think he's going to have a top 10 season this year. George Kittle is the number one receiver offensive threat on this team. He broke the all-time tight end yardage record last season, and I see him, continuing his streak in the league. I don't think he's going to have as many yards as last year because defenses are then going to tailor their game plan to George Kittle, but I still see him being disruptive. Someone who's going to benefit from that with all the defensive assignments on George Kittle is second-year man Dante Pettis. He is going to be on the outside opposite of Jordan Matthews, but I think Deebo Samuel is going to come and take that job eventually and move Jordan Matthews to the slot. And also, Jalen Hurd is a name you want to keep your eye out on, especially in Yahoo leagues. There's a lot of talks that he's going to have multiple positional benefit, kind of like Jalen Samuels was a tight end and a running back. Jalen Hurd grew up as a running back but played wide receiver with college ball, but he's 6'4" and like 240, so he's an absolute monster. So they're talking about adding him as a swing tight end, which would be sick. Now we get to the crowded running back core of the 49ers. Tevin Coleman, I think, is going to be the 3-down back there, with Jerick McKinnon being the passing down back. Matt Breida, I think, tore his pectoral muscle, so he's still recovering from that, but he was on pace to take the league by storm last year. And then there's also Jeffrey Wilson and Raheem Mostert. They're not all going to make the roster, but I think Raheem Mostert is on it for special teams, so we'll see what happens there. But I'm really only drafting Tevin Coleman, and I'm not wasting like a top 6 pick on him. I'll get him in the 7th round or later. But now let's look at the defense. We got Nick Bosa, who's a boss, but just like his brother, he's got to show that he could be healthy. DeForest Buckner, beast. D Ford, who they got, is a beast from Kansas City, and Quan Alexander from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be a good Mike linebacker. They got Malcolm Smith, he's old, but good leadership, and Sherm is still on this team, so he's going to be leading the cornerbacks there, and they also got Jimmy Ward, the nickelback. So not bad. Their pass rush is definitely great, especially if Nick Bosa is going to be playing. I still see this as a very vulnerable defense. Okay, let's go to the Seattle Seahawks. Who do we have here? Mr. Russell Wilson. Pete Carroll is still the head coach. Brian Schottenheimer is the OC. Ken Norton Jr., the DC, the defensive coordinator. Now, Russell Wilson, he's 30 years old. I don't see him doing more than his QB9 performance this year because they are the #1 run team in the league. They ran the most out of any team last year. I see that being their bread and butter. They're going to try to beat you on defense and just keep it low, controlled games for them. So Russell Wilson, I think, also lost, his #1 target in Doug Baldwin. Tyler Lockett's going to step up, but the sleeper and breakout candidate that I have on the entire Seahawks team for receivers is DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss. The guy's been lifting weights since he was 3 years old. He is absolutely jacked. He can run faster than you. He can outpower you. The man is going to feed. He's basically a tight end that can run faster than John Ross. I don't know. He's absolutely maniacal. Okay. When we're looking at the line here, it's Dwayne Brown, Mikey Upati, Justin Britt, DJ Fluker, and Jermaine Effetti. That's still sus, even though they have the best run team in the league. But, Chris Carson hasn't shown his health that well. And Rashad Penny is now, I think, going to eventually usurp Chris Carson. Even though age isn't a factor, they're only a year apart. But I think Chris Carson's longevity isn't going to last just because they're running backs. And I think Rashad Penny, for dynasty purposes, is going to be a huge pick this year. But I'm also going to try to take Chris Carson and just have that insurance to have the #1 run team from last year. At tight end, it's Nick Vannett and Will Dissly. I don't want anything with the tight ends of the Seattle Seahawks. But now let's look at their defense. They drafted LJ Collier. They got Ziggy Ansah from Detroit, who he's a beast. Barkevious Mingo has shown some, good traits. I don't think he's that much of a difference maker. Shaquem Griffin is, he's a good rallier. He's got a good spirit for the team. Bobby Wagner's still there. KJ Wright's still there. Shaquille Griffin, the twin, is there. I still don't see this being the best defense in this division. I think it's the second, or tied with the 49ers. The Rams do have the best defense. So with that said, let's pop over to Los Angeles, my hometown. Okay, we are in LA. Now, Jared Goff, even though he had the worst Super Bowl ever, I think he's going to be a viable target this year. Sean McVay is the head coach, and then he's got two offensive coordinators, one for the run game, and Aaron Cromer and Shane Waldron in the pass game, and Wade Phillips is still the defensive coordinator. Big ol' Wade, he's a beast. Okay, yeah, Jared Goff, I think, is going to be a top 10 quarterback because of his weapons. He's got Cooper Kupp back off an ACL. Robert Woods is a beast. Fight on. And then we also got Brandon Cooks. He is the only receiver to have consecutive 1,000-yard seasons with 3 different teams in 3 consecutive years. I think he's going to continue that with a 4th season of 1,000 yards on the Rams, especially because Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods both have health problems. If one of those guys go down, then you're going to want to have Josh Reynolds as an incentive. So if you're drafting Brandon Cooks with your 3rd or 4th round pick, I would go try to pick up Josh Reynolds at the end of your draft. Also, I'm staying away from the tight ends. All the tight ends except George Kittle in the NFC West are boo-boo. So Gerald Everett, he might have some good games. He had a couple good games at the end of the year, but that's because they just were limiting Todd Gurley and they had to find other ways to win. Speaking of Todd Gurley, this is the Achilles heel of the entire team. There's been a lot of news around him with an arthroscopic problem with his left knee. Well, that's what happens when you tear your ACL. I tore my ACL, not from football, from other things. But I am at risk to get arthritis in my knee. I think this has been a lot of news and it's been overplayed. I think Todd Gurley is going to have his workload reduced, but at the end of the day, he's been the MVP in fantasy for 2 years. He's going to be an absolute beast again this year. He's going to get all the goal line work, and there's this guy that you need to pick up if you're going to draft Gurley. If you know you're getting Gurley, you have to spend this pick and get Darrell Henderson out of Memphis. He's the rookie running back that the Rams drafted to complement Todd Gurley and also maybe take his place if this left knee does not hold up for years to come. Now, let's look at the defense here. Well, okay, the offensive line of the Rams we have is such. Andrew Whitworth, a beast. Austin Blythe was good. Robert Havenstein was good. This is a nice, good line. Jared Goff's going to have time in the pocket. I don't really see them not winning this division. And let's look at this defense because they're also a bunch of beasts. Michael Brockers is great. You remember him from his time at Hard Knocks. Aaron Donald, beast. Dante Fowler Jr. was re-signed. Corey Littleton is a beast. They just added Clay Matthews from Green Bay. Fight on. Marcus Peters, beast. Eric Weddle, he's going to provide a lot of good veteran leadership there, along with Aqib Talib and Nickel Roby-Coleman. All right? So I think that's about it. That's a good first episode that we just got out of the way. We're going to now have the NFC South coming up, followed by the NFC North, and then the NFC East. So, sit down, buckle up, get strapped in. We got the off season going, getting you ready for training camp, and then the preseason, and then your draft, and then we're going to win you the ship, all right? Get ready. Cut the crap.